Hi, greetings everyone. This is Diana Annab, a research and teaching assistant and master's student at the Najah National University, Department of Architectural Engineering. And it's a pleasure to be presenting in today's conference and joining the platform of architecture and technology. And today I'll be sharing one of my recent research entitled as Overlooking the Visibility of Mosques from a Norm to a Harm on Developed Urbanism in Nablus City. So literature shared about the relation of Islam to architecture or architecture to Islam has been controversial. However, what is agreed on is that certainly there's a dilemma of identification of Islamic architecture. Several terminologies were raised in this regard. For instance, we've got the terminology of Islamic architecture that is usually used in different contexts than architecture of Muslims or theory of Islamic architecture or even Islamic theory of architecture. So since we've got a dilemma of identification of Islamic architecture, this would assure having a negligence on the concepts leading to the authentic production of Islamic architecture. And an example of these neglected concepts would be undermining the value of historic Islamic architecture in contemporary times, which in other terms can be referred to as ruining the urban fabric of historic Islamic architecture. And among the urban measures, visibility comes to be substantial in defining architectural landmarks, especially to users and viewers of the space. And when we speak about visibility of mosques, it is inevitable not to mention the critical writings of Dr. Ali Abdel Raouf in his book From Mecca to Las Vegas, when he spoke about the transition of Muslims' priority from perceiving and getting closer to the Kaaba from the ground to overviewing the Kaaba from the top while accessing one of the highest towers located in its contemporary surrounding context. Similarly, the Galata Port Waterfront Development Project located in Istanbul is creating a visual barrier and preventing Al-Nasratiya Mosque from its right to be visible from the coast. So all of that comes to be wrapped up in a single question, which is how the norm of historic mosque visibility became harmed within the developed urbanism of Islamic cities. And in order to have an answer for this question, this study develops a comparative methodology of comparing the norm of historic mosques versus the harm of developed urbanism to both historic and contemporary mosques. And the case chosen for conducting the study is Nablus city, located in the West Bank. And the reason for choosing Nablus is because of its topographic nature that would alter the visibility of mosques in a radical way. So in this study, Al-Nasr Mosque is used as a historic mosque, and it will be compared with the contemporary mosque of Kawthar. So to start with, Al-Nasr Mosque is located in the center of the old city, particularly in Al-Qaryon quarter. Initially, the mosque was a Byzantine church, and then it was converted to a mosque. It became into its latest form in 1954. And the contents of Al-Nasr Mosque is not restrictive to the mosque itself as a building, but it includes Al-Nasr Plaza or Al-Manara Square in front of it, and it is surrounded by linear active streets. And the urban value of the plaza becomes diverse in terms that it includes commercial, social, recreational, and spiritual value. So sometimes we see the square operating as an open-air prayer plaza or a public gathering place or place for school activities or commercial vending, etc. So the activity of the plaza and the activity of streets around the mosque, of course, would increase the number of viewers and create diversity in terms of views. However, of course, due to the intactness and compactness of the urban fabric of the old city, the visibility or the mosque visibility becomes restricted to the old city itself, and the visibility to the expansive fabric of the city becomes very shallow. In terms of urban level, the mosque gains horizontal views from the accessible rooftops of surrounding buildings, and those buildings are all of average height, so none of them would exceed the height of the dome. However, what caused the harm to historic mosques is the urban violations in the contemporary timing. So we've got the vertical expansions and the accessibility of some rooftops of buildings opposite and close to Al-Nasr Mosque, and that would alter the visibility of the mosque. And in order to compare the results obtained from the observations and the fieldwork and the semi-structured interviews, they were compared with the use of or the measure of visibility using some computational tools run by plugins in the software of Rhinoceros, and specifically the use of Grasshopper. So in this computational tool, four locations were pinned around the mosque, depicting, of course, its four sides or its four facades. And the results showed that the intactness of urban fabric makes the buildings are either of most visibility or least visibility. And it also proved the observation of or the notion that views are restricted to the old city itself. Another computational tool showed that the highest visibility of Al-Nasr Mosque is at its roof, of course, thanks to the expansive contemporary urban fabric, and that the facade facing the plaza would be the next of most visible facade in Al-Nasr Mosque. And now moving to the second case of Kawthar Badran Mosque, where it is located in a Blabus al-Awsat neighborhood and where the context is purely residential. And the results obtained about the visibility of street level of the mosque was not really distinguished from the visibility of other contemporary mosques. And what I mean by that is that usually contemporary mosques are usually designed in two street levels as a response to the topography, where only one side of them gets to be accessible. And also the idea that there's a lack of open spaces or plazas in front of the mosque would lower the visibility of passers. In terms of urban level, surrounding buildings are high and they would overlook the mosque. And there was also something interesting to tackle on, which is the dual and contrasting visual characteristic of the mosque. Sometimes it would dominate the buildings on the street below, and sometimes it would does the opposite to the buildings on the same street level. So there's a contrasting dominance, I would say. Results of the computational tool show that there is a closeness of buildings raises the visibility, and that the facade of direct views to the pinned points is of the highest value. Less and higher angles would alter the result, and open urban spaces increase the number of visible buildings. And this is a close-up on how the computational tool shows the result of visibility, that it does not only evaluate the visibility of surrounding buildings to specific points in terms of graphical or visual way, but it would also evaluate the facades of those buildings numerically. And results also showed that the sides facing the open spaces and towards buildings at lower height would have maximum visibility, while on the other hand, the sides facing buildings, especially in these two images, close to the mosque and at lower height, would have minimum visibility. And lastly, this is to show that the comparison of contemporary and old or historic mosques drove on a couple of points, which were the height of surrounding buildings, ratio of height of surrounding buildings to the height of the mosque, direction, exposure, and quality of visibility, and intactment of context to the mosque itself. And the results of the study showed that the visibility of Al-Nasr Mosque gained or was higher than Al-Kawthar Mosque due to the intactness and the closeness of its urban fabric, and also because of its quality, of course. That we can say that in both mosques the exposure of visibility was high. However, the quality, of course, of the visibility was distinguished. The role of majestic and grand mosque disappear in both mosques. The restrictions of height surrounding Al-Nasr Mosque is an application to protect the general urban fabric of the old city, but not a direct application for the urban visibility conservation to historic mosques, and that was a gap. And that we can say that the only visual attribute of contemporary mosques in general is their either green symbolic light at night or their minarets in the daytime. Unfortunately, other than that, they just would appear as regular buildings if we just remove the green light or even the minaret. So that would get us to the conclusion that at the current time, most connections to contemporary mosques are being auditory rather than visuals, and this is to rethink that the relation of Muslims to mosques, that it's not only that it shouldn't be only heard, but it should be seen. And this is to wrap up with some general recommendations on the contribution to practice of a humane and Islamic architecture. To start with, Islamic values should be integrated and interpreted to better and more adequate physical measures. The sense of enclosures should be enhanced in contemporary mosques, and urban measures of mosques, such as building to street height ratio and building closeness, accessibility, should be rethought and restudied. And this gets us to the end of my session. Thank you very much for having me, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.